Story 1. I was shopping at my local supermarket just before Christmas. They have a large deli section with a numbered ticket system, as they can get quite busy. I needed some sliced meat, so I went to the deli section first. Most people understand the deli ticket machine etiquette, which is take your ticket and then move along so the next person can get theirs. Occasionally, I find some people who think the process is to take their ticket and stand directly in front of the ticket machine, blocking everyone else until they are called or asked to move. When I arrive, the deli is busy with more than 10 people waiting, but no one is blocking the ticket machine, so I happily take my number and move along. The next stage of deli etiquette is to stand back from the counter until you are called. I look around and everyone else waiting their turn is following this unwritten rule, and the world is a better place. There are 4 staff working, and they move through the customers quickly. I notice that the area is getting busier as for each customer served, 2 more people have taken numbers. There are about 18 people waiting now, but my number is next. Then I see a woman approaching. She is old enough to have gray hair, but has a dyed blonde streak through it. She bypasses the ticket machine and goes straight to the center of the counter. I am wondering if she had taken a ticket before, left, and then returned, when one of the staff called my number. I smiled, held up my hand with the ticket, and walked forward to the counter where the sales assistant, a young woman of about 19 years, was waiting for me. "Excuse me," the older woman says as she steps in front of me. "I have been waiting for a while, and I did not know I needed a number. Can you get me 150 grams of the shaved Virginia ham?" "I am sorry, this gentleman was next," the assistant replied. "But I have been waiting for a long time, dear, and I did not know I needed a number," she protests. "This gentleman was next," the assistant replies again. "Excuse me, dear," the old woman says, now with an annoyed tone in her voice, "but I have been waiting for a very long time." "I know exactly how long you have been waiting," another sales assistant says as she stands beside the young assistant. This woman is middle-aged, and I don't know if she has some kind of leadership role, but there is a sense of authority in her voice. "We are very busy," she continued, "and we will not be serving anyone without a number. The numbers are available there." She points to the ticket machine. "You will need a number to be served. If you need assistance taking a number, we can help you." The older woman opens her mouth, but before she can speak, the middle-aged assistant calls out loudly, "Number 62, please," and moves away. The younger assistant moves away as well, gesturing for me to follow while she asks, "How can I help you?" The older woman, now flustered that no one is standing in front of her to hear her complaints, marches towards the ticket machine. "Thanks for that," I say. "She does it all the time," the young assistant whispers as she shakes her head. I tell her what I need, and I add 150 grams of shaved Virginia ham. It's not on my list, but I had not worked out what was for lunch, and now I know. I move on to the fruit section next, and from there I can see the deli. The older woman has returned to her spot at the center of the counter, holding her numbered ticket at shoulder height and staring impatiently at the staff behind the counter. The staff continue to soldier on, working quickly through the customers' orders and ignoring the woman's stare. Story 2. Hey all, Uncle Bobby is an amazing man, and like Aunt Rose will feature a lot in the stories of my youth. This particular one is something that happened when I was young. I don't remember much of it myself due to the hospital trip, but we've pieced enough together. Cast: Uncle Bobby, entitled witch, our entitled mother, entitled jerk, entitled father, myself, the ponies of America herd, 20 of them. So the pasture closest to the road was just under 15 acres of fenced-in area. The ponies or horses had a private pond we kept pretty clean with a few well-placed tubs of water around the place as well. We used this pasture as a way to train horses not to be afraid of cars, trucks, or buses. It worked pretty well. Horses would graze near the fence line and get steadily used to car noise. This was how Uncle Bobby trained horses, slow and steady. Some motorcycles roared by and the horses would bolt. In the pasture, they had plenty of room to run if they did spook at the sounds from the road. On this day, the pony herd was out, and about in the pasture, including my pony, Lucifer. He started out his life as Angel Bear, then earned the name Lucifer when he turned 3. No more sweet, cute lover boy antics. He knew how to turn on the hose. He knew how to aim the hose. He knew how to open stall doors. He knew how to open the grain room. I could go on and on about all the pranks Lucifer would pull, but that would stretch this story to epic proportions. One thing I will mention about Lucifer is he adored mud. Absolutely adored it. He would roll in mud, he would rub mud into the sides of other ponies or horses, and he would do so gleefully. So let's say you had a herd of 20 well-looked-after ponies set out to the pasture. By the end of that first hour, you would have a bunch of muddy-looking fools. That's what happened on the day this story takes place. The herd had turned out. We had 4 new trail ponies with a group of old pros. It helped teach the less experienced ones about how to handle the traffic on the road. Another thing Uncle Bobby insisted on? Lucifer had gone right to the 1.5-foot deep pond and waded out to find the muddiest part that he could. He then dug the mud at the side of the bank, getting himself a nice mud patch to lay down and roll in. His white fur with brown spots. Look up a leopard pony of America, and you'll have someone close to Lucifer. I was coming to the pasture to make sure all the water troughs were full and clean and fill the center feeder with some alfalfa and rolled corn, when I noticed a man and woman out in the pasture. The man was trying to bait a few of the ponies closer to him, clucking at them and holding an apple in his hand. The sun had set at this point, and the couple's focus was completely on the ponies. I noticed a van in the pasture and found they'd broken the lock on the gate near the road, pulled into the pasture, and had a U-Haul trailer behind their van. I froze as I realized we were dealing with horse thieves. I didn't scream. I shook one of the buckets that contained corn, and every pony started to head right towards me. They were happy to see me. The couple was not. The man snarled that these were their horses, and how dare I trick them with food like that as he started coming towards me. He had a dog leash in his hand, not a lead rope, and a dog collar was already around the smallest point of one of the ponies' necks. I told the man as I backed up, these were our ponies, and we raised them. The man was very angry as he moved closer, talking in a low, even tone that I had better sit down and shut up or else. Some part of my brain realized he was talking quietly, not screaming at me, so I screamed and tried to duck in with the horses. I managed to let out another scream before the man punched me in the face, hoping one of my family would be close enough to hear. I hit the ground and saw a mud ball knock into the man's side as my vision went hazy and dark. From this point on, this is from my Uncle Bobby's point of view. Me? I'm knocked out cold in the pasture. Well, Uncle Bobby heard a little girl scream and grabbed the barn rifle, the walkie, and got on Sammy's back. The two of them took off down the path to where they'd heard the scream and knew where I should be. Sammy was a mixed-breed horse of Appaloosa, Tennessee Walker, quarter horse, and standard-bred. He was Uncle Bobby's horse, and this boy needed no saddle, bridle, or any tack when it came down to business. Uncle Bobby rode hard down to the pasture to find a man with a hand around my ankle, Lucifer digging his teeth into a woman's arm, and the entire herd circling around in a panic. At some point along the ride, he'd used the walkie to contact anyone else nearby with, Brat screamed, "Get down to the pasture now." Uncle Bobby and Sammy did not open the gate. They flew right over the fence and rode hard towards the pair. Uncle Bobby slid off Sammy's side and aimed the gun right at the man, ordering him to drop me. He thought he was watching someone try to kidnap his niece. Well, the man dropped me, seeing the gun pointed at him as Bobby moved towards me and made the man back up. The woman screamed and slapped Lucifer hard enough that he let go and went snorting off to join the rest of the herd. The man and woman took off running for the van and trailer as Uncle Bobby checked on me. The thought of them getting away with trying to kidnap me did not sit too well with Uncle Bobby. He saw the trailer and thought there might be other young kids thrown in the back there, and so he did what a reasonable adult, armed with a rifle, would do. He unloaded every bit of ammo into the van, and when a few of my brothers and cousins showed up, they proceeded to do the same. The couple hid on the other side of the van, screaming at them to stop, and one brother went off to call an ambulance and the police. The couple was held at gunpoint while Uncle Bobby checked the trailer. He found it was empty and tore through the van looking for other kids. He was so relieved when he found no other kids in the van or trailer, but refused to let the couple go. The fire department arrived first. The medic they had attended to me, though I was mostly unresponsive. I did come to for a few seconds, though I don't recall this. The police arrived and put the trespassing, crying pair in handcuffs before getting statements. The couple tried to explain they were trying to catch wild ponies and take care of them, and one of the ponies had knocked into me and knocked me out. That didn't track with what Uncle Bobby had seen of me being dragged by my ankle, instead of carried like someone usually would over an injured child. It didn't go well for the couple at all. They swore up and down they hadn't been planning a kidnapping, but at that time, a few cities over, a few kids had gone missing. So of course, the police jumped into an investigation, as they should. This couple's home was searched, as was everything they owned. I came to at the hospital and managed to give my statement, and everyone came to the conclusion that the man had been trying to get rid of the body, which still gives me chills. After a lot of investigating, it came out that the couple's child had been to a birthday party where they had ridden one of our ponies. They wanted the pony but couldn't afford it, so they had planned to bring the pony to their home, keep it in the backyard as a pet, and let their child ride it whenever they wanted. When they had come to see all the ponies out in the pasture unsupervised, they decided to take a male and a female so they could breed their own since they had the space. The man went to jail for just under 5 years and had to pay some hefty fines. The wife lost custody of the children they had and went to prison for about a year. At the trail, they tried to explain they thought the horses were wild, despite the barn they had previously constructed in their backyard, and that they hadn't meant to hurt me at all. They tried to use photographs from the road into the pasture as evidence of abuse, and all our horses were checked over for signs of neglect. None was found. Even in the photos, the mud wasn't fully dried. I made a full recovery from my concussion, and the hoof print-shaped bruises faded away too. The couple tried to go after Uncle Bobby for excessive use of a weapon or some nonsense like that, but no one bought it. All in all, I might be the baby brat in the family, but I know if I ever need help, my family isn't far. It's a comforting feeling to know. It's also nice to have a pony in your corner. If it wasn't for Lucifer that night, I wouldn't be here to write down all these stories. Story 3. Hey guys, I just had to share this crazy story with you all. You won't believe the kind of entitlement I recently witnessed. It all started on a scorching July day in North Phoenix, right near a motel. I was just minding my business when it all happened. There's even some police body camera footage, which was released later, of this encounter. Anyways, so, there I was, going about my day when I heard sirens wailing in the distance. I thought nothing of it at first, but then I saw 3 police officers approach this woman. Let's call her Karen for the sake of this story, who was causing quite a scene near the motel. It turns out she had been kicked out of her roommate's place for going berserk and even firing a gun. The officers approached her calmly, and one of them asked if she had a firearm. But of course, she denied having or firing a gun, and even told the man who seemed to be the 911 caller to stay the F away from me. But here's where it gets really wild. She then claimed that she had proof that the man was threatening her and that someone else had fired the gun. The officers, trying to do their job right, talked with her for almost 10 minutes. And to be honest, they were patient and chill, trying to sort things out. With her permission, they searched her bag and found ammunition and illegal drugs. Yep, she was carrying illegal stuff with her. And guess what? They also discovered that she had an outstanding warrant for her arrest. You'd think she'd just cooperate and sort things out calmly, right? Well, think again. When one of the officers tried to handcuff her, she started struggling to get away. And then, out of nowhere, she pulled a handgun from her waist area. The situation went from bad to worse in an instant. Karen, instead of thinking sensibly, fired the gun. It narrowly missed the officers, thank God, but they had to act fast. In self-defense, they returned fire and hit her twice. It was a shocking scene, to say the least. The officers didn't stop there, though. They performed first aid until the fire department arrived and took her to the hospital. She survived somehow, but wow, what a mess. Thankfully, no officers or bystanders were harmed during this chaotic mess. But man, you've got to give it to these officers for keeping their cool in a situation like this. Sadly, this story doesn't end here though. There's more to it. You see, this wasn't Karen's first encounter with the law and not the last. In fact, it seems like she has a knack for getting into trouble. Fast forward to October, and she's back in the headlines. This time, she was in the custody of the county sheriff's office, and she was taken to the medical center for a medical appointment. But you won't believe what happened next. As she was about to be brought back to jail, Karen managed to grab an officer's gun and fired a round outside the hospital. It's like she's determined to create chaos wherever she goes. Thankfully, no one was injured in this incident, and officers managed to take the gun back from her. I got interested and looked this incident up, and let me just tell you, the details were shocking. She was in restraints, with handcuffs, shackles, and a belly belt, but somehow, she stood up and tried to walk away. That's when the struggle began, and she grabbed the officer's gun from his holster and fired a shot. Karen is now facing aggravated assault charges stemming from the shooting outside the hospital, and it's not looking good for her. Let's hope she gets the punishment she deserves. Story 4. I'd like to start by saying that my manager is based in Europe while we work in Asia. Because of this, he relies on what we communicate to him and generally considers it truthful. Also, my manager has been the most understanding and reasonable boss I've had in my career. Almost everyone who has worked under him, even those who've left the company, speaks highly of him. That said, I acknowledge that part of this situation is my own fault. Earlier today, during a meeting, I admitted that the issue could have been avoided if I had raised my concerns the moment I disagreed with John. My manager, being as reasonable as he is, wasn't angry, but gave me a firm reminder to always be transparent whenever there's a problem. During the discussion, he focused heavily on understanding the root cause, asking questions like why there was no proper documentation for the reports, why the reports were linked to local files on John's laptop, and why insufficient time was spent on knowledge transfer. Although I didn't want to risk harming John's career, my manager insisted on getting to the bottom of the matter. He assured me that anything I shared would remain confidential, so I was honest about the situation. John has shown little interest in learning the client's product, which makes it difficult for him to understand processes and share knowledge effectively. He often leaves the office to spend time at coffee shops, even during work hours, and isn't easily found at his desk. While the rest of us stay in the office during downtime to handle urgent matters, John's habit of being unavailable adds to the challenges. He also resists learning new tools, so his reports are outdated, both in terms of efficiency and format. These were the main points I shared with my manager. I could have brought up other issues, such as his tendency to sleep at work due to his 2 part-time jobs, his habit of leaving early on weekends to catch flights to visit his girlfriend, or the inaccuracies in his reports that teammates fixed before they reached the client or our manager. However, I chose not to share these details, as I believe this is the one and only time I'll be covering for him. After hearing my concerns, my manager reminded me to be fully transparent moving forward and to avoid letting such situations happen again. He informed me that he would now oversee my onboarding personally and instructed the team to ensure all reports are properly documented by the first quarter of 2025. He also shared a story about a former coworker who was dismissed for similar behavior, emphasizing the seriousness of the matter. He plans to investigate John's comings and goings in the office and will push him to optimize his reports, aiming for a permanent solution to address his performance issues. To provide some context, I work with a generally cooperative and supportive team. Whenever someone goes on leave, another team member usually steps in to handle their workload seamlessly. However, recent headcount reductions have led to increased workloads for everyone, requiring us to take on additional albeit smaller clients. John was responsible for 2 clients, whom we'll call Client 1 and Client 2. I've been part of this team for over 2 years and primarily handled Client X. In September, I resigned but returned in November, only to find my role reprofiled. My new responsibilities included Client 1 and serving as a backup for Client 2. During my first week back, John told me he planned to take a week-long vacation the following week. When I asked if our manager had approved it, he assured me everything was fine. Being the backup for Client 2, I expressed concern that I wasn't fully onboarded and might struggle to handle the workload. John dismissed my concerns, saying it wouldn't be a problem. John's idea of onboarding was haphazard at best. On Monday, the week before his vacation, I asked him to onboard me, but he told me to figure things out independently while he worked on other tasks. By Tuesday, he introduced me to just one report, spending only 10 minutes explaining it before leaving the office. On Wednesday, I joined a call with our manager and John, only to find out that John had just requested vacation approval that day. During the call, John confidently stated that I was fully onboarded and could handle all the tasks during his absence. After the call, I confronted John, pointing out that he had 9 daily reports for Client 2, yet I'd been introduced to only one. He brushed it off, promising I'd manage and that he'd call if I needed help during his vacation. By Friday, he hastily provided a vague list of reports, their data sources, and brief, unclear instructions. When John left, I powered through the first 3 days, often encountering errors in the reports due to poor documentation. Some queries linked to data sources were only accessible on John's work laptop, which created additional complications. Then, on Thursday, I discovered an unmentioned weekly business review report that was due in 2 hours. John wasn't answering my calls until 30 minutes later, and we barely managed to submit it on time. The stress from these avoidable issues, coupled with my manager's evident frustration, pushed me to confront John again after his return. He showed little concern and continued to avoid properly onboarding me. This pattern persisted, with him sending incomplete instructions and expecting me to figure things out independently. Eventually, his poor instructions caused confusion with another team member, who escalated the issue to our manager. Upon review, our manager found significant errors in the reports. When confronted, I explained that I'd followed John's instructions to the letter. John, visibly upset, stormed out of the office and blocked me on all social media. My manager has scheduled a meeting with me tomorrow to discuss the situation further. While I'm confident in my actions, this incident has highlighted the importance of proper onboarding, documentation, and teamwork. Story 5. I'm a 26-year-old female, and I live in a rented house with a 30-year-old single mother and her 6-year-old son. Initially, another person lived with me, but they moved out, and the mother moved in. I don't mind sharing the house with her and her child. We mostly do our own thing. I spend a lot of time at my boyfriend's place or at work, and since our schedules rarely overlap, we don't interact much. When we do, it's generally fine. It's clear that she struggles financially, and while I sympathize, I don't think it excuses certain behaviors. I don't make a lot of money myself, so I understand the challenge of budgeting. Not long after she moved in, I started noticing my food disappearing or portions being taken. At first, I assumed her son might be eating it, so I brought it up calmly. She assured me she would make sure it didn't happen again. It wasn't a big deal initially, but it became frustrating when I'd come home from a long day at work, expecting to eat my leftovers, only to find them picked through or entirely gone. I brought it up several more times, but instead of addressing the issue, she became increasingly annoyed. Observing them, I noticed neither of them ever ate vegetables. Any food I made that had green in it, broccoli, green beans, etc., would remain untouched, while things like orange chicken would disappear entirely. This gave me an idea. I started incorporating vegetables into everything I made. Since I already enjoy vegetables, it wasn't much of an adjustment. For instance, I'd mix green beans into leftover mashed potatoes or add broccoli to cheesy fries. Once, I made a pot of mac and cheese, her son's favorite, and added roasted Brussels sprouts. It was delicious to me, and it solved the problem of my food going missing. Win-win, right? Things came to a head when she saw me adding Brussels sprouts to the mac and cheese. She seemed irritated and commented, "What are you doing with that?" When I explained that I liked Brussels sprouts, she accused me of being greedy and annoying. She said, "We need food," to which I replied that she should buy some or consider purchasing less prepackaged food to stretch her budget further. This wasn't about refusing to share. The issue was the assumption that my food was fair game without asking. I often came home expecting a meal I'd planned for, only to find it gone. A simple text asking if she could have some would have made all the difference. That way, I could prepare or plan accordingly. Eating the last portion of someone else's food without permission feels especially inconsiderate. Sharing is one thing, but outright taking without regard is another. Update. I've stuck to adding vegetables to everything. Recently, I even added celery and bell peppers to lasagna. She continues to call me inconsiderate, but she still won't admit outright that she's eating my food. For snacks like chips or baked goods, I've started storing them in my room. This prevents them from disappearing too. Her son once knocked on my door to ask for a bag of microwave popcorn. I gladly gave him one. This isn't about being stingy. If she simply communicated, most of this could have been avoided. A few days ago, I was making taco meat and planned to add mushrooms and bell peppers. She was subtly watching from the side, but became visibly upset when she saw the mushrooms. She blurted out, "Son's name hates mushrooms," before I calmly poured them into the pan. This caused a dramatic reaction I hadn't seen before. She began yelling and slamming cabinets, clearly frustrated. Her son looked on, confused and silent, which made me feel bad for him. Despite her outburst, she didn't tamper with my food, knock anything over, or become physically confrontational. She just vented her frustration loudly. At one point, she threatened to involve authorities. I told her to go ahead if she felt it necessary and suggested she relax. I acknowledged how hard it must be to be a single mom, but I also pointed out that she could use her government assistance more responsibly. She often buys expensive prepared foods like sushi, macaroni and cheese, and rotisserie chicken, which depletes her budget quickly. I suggested food pantries or buying staples like potatoes and rice to stretch her resources. She called me condescending and accused me of always having food to eat, which isn't entirely true. I just budget carefully. Some people suggested I prepare extra food to share with her and her son, but that's not feasible for me financially. I don't earn enough to regularly feed 2 additional people. Occasionally sharing leftovers would be fine, but this was a consistent issue. If I make a pot of something, I expect it to last me for several days. When my food goes missing, it disrupts my budget, wastes my time, and forces me to go grocery shopping more often than planned. I genuinely feel for her situation, but her lack of communication and unwillingness to respect boundaries have made it difficult to coexist peacefully. Story 6. I have 3 nieces and a nephew I was quite close to. They frequently spent weekends and every special occasion with us in our home. As of writing this, I've not seen them for nearly a year. My SIL and I were both employed as caregivers to elderly homebound individuals. Because of our job experience, we were taking turns assisting our grandfather-in-law with dementia. In March, he received a credit card statement with over $21,000 in transactions. When confronted with a bill, SIL admitted she had taken and used the credit card. On my next visit to assist him, I drove him to the sheriff's office to file criminal charges despite SIL's promises to pay off the debt with the bank. Those charges are still pending. SIL was fired and blacklisted from working with elderly people and has cried that should be punishment enough. Once charges were filed, the children were no longer allowed to spend any time with me, my husband, or our sons. She's run through several jobs and was recently fired from another one for, you guessed it, stealing. Just before Halloween, I switched jobs and noticed my SS card was missing. I then received a new credit card in the mail that I had not applied for. SIL currently resides at my previous address, as we gave her the house where she currently lives. I often receive credit card offers in the mail, and they've been sent to that address on numerous occasions. I was immediately suspicious, but with nothing to go on, I let it go. On November 21st, I received a credit alert that I had opened a PayPal credit account and paid another PayPal user $250. I contacted the creditor as well as local law enforcement. SIL is adamant she's had nothing to do with it. I'm still waiting on paperwork from the bank to verify her contact information on the application. She dug in her heels and announced that the children are not allowed to spend any time with us for Christmas unless all charges against her are dropped. This will be the first Christmas my youngest son hasn't spent with his cousins. He's heartbroken. I'm just pissed. I don't understand how she musters the audacity. Editing to answer some questions because this blew up. She is my husband's brother's wife. She turned 30 this year. Her kids are 11, 7, 4 and 2. My boys are 18 and 10. I froze my credit after I received the first credit card. Not 100% sure how the transaction still went through. My thought is she had all the necessary information and could easily have unfrozen it. It's taking so long to nail down charges because attorneys are nitpicking over which charges she spent versus which were legitimate. Aside from bills, some purchases she made were $800 tickets to a Backstreet Boys concert, a $700 Venmo to her BFF, a $1,600 boudoir photo shoot, $600 at Victoria's Secret, $450 in deliveries from her fave local Mexican restaurant, $400 ATV excursion in Cozumel, Mexico on a cruise her husband paid for, and $650 from a website that sells designer scrubs. Nothing was purchased for her kids. Update. At a court hearing this past week, SIL was sentenced to serve 20 days in jail suspended until after the first of the year and must pay $8,000 in restitution. Story 7. When I met my husband, I was a semi-professional baker, not intentionally, but because every weekend, friends and family would ask and pay me to bake cakes, pies, and cookies. My specialties are cheesecakes and cakes with surprises inside. Baking is my passion, and people seem to love my work. When we moved to his hometown, I was excited to bring some of my baked goods to family gatherings. Right before our first Christmas there, I told my husband's sisters about a special Christmas cake I planned to make. I'd already sourced incredible ingredients, including fruit from a local farmer that I was thrilled about. But they immediately dismissed the idea, telling me, "Don't bother. We'll just get the store-bought cake." This became a pattern. They often shot down my offers, only to turn around and gladly accept similar ones from their friends. It'd be rude to refuse, they'd say. That first Christmas, the store-bought cake they brought was a disaster, rock hard and practically inedible. The kids made fun of it, joking that it was better suited for building a bread brick house than eating. Fast forward a few years, and my husband couldn't stop bragging about my baking to anyone who would listen. Word spread, and my semi-professional baking hobby was back in full swing. Even my nieces and nephews would join me in the kitchen to bake when we watched them, learning new recipes and having fun. Despite all this, the same store-bought cake makes its appearance at every family Christmas. It's become a tradition, but it's clear no one enjoys it. Year after year, the cake sits uneaten, a relic of someone's stubborn insistence on keeping this peculiar tradition alive. Yesterday, we were all together for a discussion about the holidays, stemming from a situation involving my in-laws. Since we're hosting Christmas this year, I offered to handle all the food and suggested they bring dessert. That's when the oldest niece chimed in, immediately complaining, "Why do we have to get that awful cake every year? Why can't you make something for dessert instead?" Before I could respond, my husband jumped in, explaining that her mom, my sister-in-law, and aunt, her other sister, preferred the store-bought cake. The kid gave her mom a look, then her aunt, then back to my husband, and said with the blunt honesty only kids can manage, "Well, they can't even cook. They shouldn't get to pick what we eat." Ouch. That wicked burn hung in the air for a moment. While I was secretly loving it, I quickly intervened, telling her that we need to respect traditions that make people feel more at home, even if they don't align with our personal taste. I emphasize the importance of respecting others' choices. But let's be real, I've planted the seed of anti-exclusionary traditionalism in the next generation, and I'm not mad about it. That kid earned herself a cake of her choice next time she visits. If she wants a triple-layer chocolate cake with sprinkles and a surprise in the middle, she's getting it. Because sometimes a little truth served with a side of baked goods is the sweetest revenge of all.